And of course, we know that raid players get all the chicks. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and I am not alone. We have a first-time guest here. We have Cece Line from Cece Raids. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. Let's talk some Raid.
Awesome. Yeah, you are a newer content creator. I think, what, 3-4 months ago maybe you started this? Why don't you give a background on a little bit how you got into the game and what you've been doing?
Yeah, so I started end of November and decided to play the game, try the game out, and I figured I should start a channel with it. And then I got to create a link for players to help them along the journey. It's the same one I started with. And I was like, you know what? I'll start the game. I'll start the channel. We'll see where things go. And honestly, it's kind of just taken off from there. I have gotten so pulled into this game that the amount of hours I'm spending in here is, I'm sure you guys can agree though. Like, you know, I don't have to explain it, right?
It is not a healthy number of hours in this game sometimes if you're really trying to make a balanced life. But, you know, it's fun. It sucks you in. There's a lot to do. And honestly, you can kind of consume it casually, or you can go harder core like we're doing a little bit. But yeah, I wanted to talk with you because it's been nice to see you've been chronicling your new player journey as it is, and you're not new to these style of games though. You said, what other games you covered?
I have played a few different games. My main one was Summoner's War. I played that one that's probably what got me into content in the first place, was starting that type of gacha. But then from there, I regularly download and try games. So I'm one of those people that I'll see what's new. Like, I'll check out mobile games, what's in the app store, download it, play it for a week or two, and then it depends. If it sucks me in, I'll keep playing it, and then I might even start videos on it, or I eventually just forget about it. So Raid obviously is one of the ones that stuck with me.
So yeah, so that's kind of where you're coming from, and that's what I think we're going to talk about with this video. We're going to talk about somebody who hasn't played Raid before, what their new player experience is versus, for example, I've been playing Raid for a long time. I've been doing the Hell Hades free-to-play challenge. We're on my free-to-play account here, and I keep on clicking in stuff. But it's been interesting for me seeing the new player experience and comparing it to what I experienced, you know, 3-4 years ago when I started the game. But also knowing what I know makes it easier for me to transition in some things, and I'm just kind of curious, you know, you certainly know some of the mechanics of a gacha game, but there's obviously unique stuff in Raid that's definitely a little different.
Yeah, there's things in Raid that I've actually really appreciated because, as you said, I'm from the gacha space. So for me, it was a very easy transition. It's very similar in the sense of like how you play a game, there's RNG, you're pulling for champions, you have to build these champions with some type of equipment, gear, runes, whatever you want to call it. Every game kind of has it. You have your energy, yourself. So like things like that, right? It's very easy to jump into if you've played other games. If you haven't, it can kind of seem like a lot, which is part of why I kind of wanted to document things from the start and from a beginner's perspective, because you can definitely play Raid however you want to play it, but you can also make mistakes in that sense that might set you back in progress. And if you don't know what to do or where to go, I feel like that can kind of be a bottleneck. So it's definitely helpful. Like you said, like you started the free to play Hell Hades challenge, and obviously if you've been in Raid for a while, then it's easier to kind of do something like that because you know exactly what do I do and what do I not do. Yeah.
So I guess probably from the first start, why don't we start with, like, you know, something at least positive for the early game that kind of sucked you in and brought you in. What does Raid do well in the early game?
They hit you with a ton of the energy and silver early on, so you feel like you're not worrying about resources because you're getting into the game, and like hopefully you're using somebody's download link, so you're starting off with stronger champions if you can, because it makes it a lot less grindy in the beginning. Right? It allows you to really just go through the game. It makes it so much easier because you have champions that could take you through different aspects of the game. So you get immersed into it, right? Because you're easily able to do campaign, and then you're doing arena and you're leveling up. So you're unlocking more. And it kind of just leads you, like for me, I love pulling shards because I love building champions and seeing what I could get and that collection aspect. So I feel like it kind of snowballs from there.
Yeah, they definitely, you know, it's getting underneath your energy cap is one of the more difficult challenges early on in Raid. I know it took me probably almost 2 days straight of playing, practically running it in the background and doing stuff just to get down to, all right, I'm no longer, you know, I'm actually earning that energy back again. Silver is one of the ones that I've always felt was a bit of a struggle, but did they have the silver pack that they gave to you when you started, where they give you 7 million silver when you start?
Yes, they do. And that's why I'm saying you feel like you're rich. You're swimming in it.
Oh, yeah. That's not much.
Yeah.
not much at all.
Not later on, but when you're like day one and you see that, you're like, oh, I'm rich. Like, and then you quickly realize that you're not that rich. That's
Yeah,
gonna go
and
fast.
then did they have the Apprentice Pass back when you started as well, or not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, because the Apprentice Pass is basically where the Forge Pass is and the Heroes Pass they have what they call the Apprentice Pass, which is actually a really cool guide for leveling up your starter champion. So it actually has quests based off of both doing a couple things daily, it's mostly just running campaign, as well as earning points for booking Kale, for example, as my starter, getting him to certain levels, getting certain books in him, and I thought this was very well done as well. And if you did the paid version of it, you also got Rector Drath at the end of it as well, which is a great champion. Now, there's a lot of codes that certainly do that as well, but Rector's an amazing champion, so I still think that's a great shout out from Raid there too. So going a little more negative though, I mean, obviously there's a lot to do. There's certainly a lot that they immerse you in. What were some of the biggest pain points that you kind of ran into early on with game design maybe, or just what you had to figure out?
The whole leveling up to unlock certain things, that's one of them. Like for me, like Altar of Souls. So when I started, it was when they were giving Loki away. So as long as you logged in for 7 days, you got Loki, right? And then you got his like Soul Stone. But I couldn't equip it on him for so long because I had to get my account leveled up to actually be able to do that.
Yeah,
and that was one of those things like, I'm like, oh, I have to keep grinding out. But it would have been nice just to have that.
Yeah, that one's rough. They finally fixed a couple things with that too. It used to be, for example, when you were leveling up gear, if I'd go to upgrade gear and the instant upgrades, this used to unlock at level 40. And just that it's just, are you trying to get people to quit your game? Because by the time this thing rolls up to plus 16, they'll have left at that point. It's just,
yeah, you're sitting there watching gear upgrade. No, you don't want to do that.
No, nobody's got time for that. That's pretty rough. And yeah, that was one of the ones that they've recently changed, which is definitely there. What did you think about like the missions and the challenges, for example? Because there's some good parts and bad parts to those.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's good in the sense that it guides you. Because like I said, the game can be a little overwhelming if you don't really know where to start and what to do. The part that kind of, I guess for me, I'm somebody that if I see it, I want to just get it done. And for example, where it tells you that you have to go farm like some of the keeps, like you need to do magic keep to get a specific, like, something from there. But then it'll tell you as soon as you unlock that one, suddenly it's like, okay, now go do force or something. But that's not the one that's unlocked yet. So you're almost stuck waiting. Like that part for me. Because I was
it's an intentionally obtuse thing where like it should be in order of spirit, force, magic, and then void, but instead they do spirit, magic, force, void to make you possibly trip over this and wait on this, or to do what I kind of did, which is I actually sped run fast enough through the early game that I got through most of those before I had them locked out in the first week, which to be fair is not something anyone should ever normally expect to do, but that's kind of where I focused on it. One of my big pain points with the early game that I think they really need to fix are some of the challenges early on. How many hours did you spend in the sewers of Arnok?
Oh my, I know exactly what you're talking about. When you're there, like, get this specific, like, 5-star gear set. Like, some of them I got very lucky and I got right away, like 10 runs. And then, honestly, some were probably days. Like, at some point I gave up on it and I was like, I'm clearly not going to get this. Leave it for a bit. And eventually I came back to it. That's a huge hindrance because you can waste so much energy trying to get this RNG drop.
Attack gloves are not what you want to be putting on your attack champions. Attack boots are not what you want on anybody. Yeah, it's just, these are things that if they, it didn't have to be this set, although that's fine. The fact that they limit it to normal for some of the quests is absolutely brutal as well, because you might be well past it, and then you have to go back to normal and waste all your energy, and it just doesn't make any sense if you don't catch it early on.
That was definitely me.
Very painful.
I prefer the ones that are like normal or higher, or the ones that will be like stage 10 or higher. Those ones I like because obviously makes it a little easier.
Yeah, like this one here, and I know why this one's actually a problem. This is clear stage 15 of the Spirit Keep 10 times. It's actually frustrating because the previous one was clear stage 13 or higher, and this one's just stage 15. The reason this is stage 15 is actually an older problem is because there were only 15 stages at a time. They actually added 5 more stages to the keeps. So some of these that have you stop at 15 or stop at 20 and say that's the one you have to farm, it's literally because they haven't gone back and fixed it after they added more content, which is frustrating.
Oh. Yeah, see, I wouldn't know that from my perspective because for me, I see stage 20 and I'm assuming they added it somewhere along the way. But yeah, I guess it's something that should definitely be upgraded then because you
Yeah,
need that or higher.
and it's weird that it's okay in some of them and not in others. It's definitely something that they could certainly make a little more consistent here. How about like the other areas? Obviously the dungeons. I mean, I like the dungeon designs. I think the dungeons are well designed in Raid.
Yes.
They've each got their own mechanic that you need to learn. They're different enough that you can't eventually you have to interact with those mechanics and use different champions. And while there's certainly some overlap early on, as you get further and further in, you need to develop the roster, which is kind of the point of these games. Any particular dungeon your favorite on these and give you any of them get kind of frustrated?
Well, this is the thing because I struggled with some of the dungeons, but that was champion based. So if you don't have a lot of champions that have multi-hits, then Fire Knight for me was a pain point early on just because I didn't have a lot of ones that had that A1 where they could do the multi-hits. So I found I got bottlenecked and kind of stuck a bit until I either built those champions or was able to actually get them. And then for a period of time, it was Spider's Den because I didn't have AoE champions. So that's one of the things. But at the same time, it eventually comes along and it did allow me to focus on other parts of the game. So, but I would say like for a favorite right now, like Dragon's Lair is probably one of my favorite just because that's kind of the champions that I have that are able to do it pretty well. I don't know if I have a specific like favorite. I'm still at the point where I have to actually like build out each individual thing now. Just like you said, I started with like a roster of like say 5 main champions, but now I'm at the point where like I need to build specific ones for spiders, specific ones for ice golem. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Have you approached the Sand Devil or the Phantom Shogun at all?
Yes. So Sand Devil, I got to a stage I think like 14 on it. Yeah, Phantom, no, not yet. Not there yet.
Phantom's actually, I've found it so far. In fact, I've gotten all the way up to 15 on my free to play here with just random champions for the most part. This is right around when the mechanics of it start to get more difficult, so it's actually not as bad as it could be. I guess the problem with Phantom Shogun, which is always been the problem with it, is because artifacts are certainly more of the lifeblood of your account early on than accessories. There's less of a reason to dive into here early on. And later on, because the accessories have less randomness about them as well, you get there's a lot less reason to have to re-roll some of the ascensions for them, and there's 3 of them versus 6 using the other stuff too, so you don't use them quite as much anywhere either. So this gets farmed a little less. It's kind of natural, but it's actually not as bad as Sand Devil in many ways as far as accessibility goes, because it's not like Sand Devil certainly wipes your team at a certain point in time if you're not careful with it, and a lot of it is managing or mitigating that in some way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you spot on. I just haven't been in Phantom because I haven't really needed to. So like it's spot on. The reason I haven't attempted or tried to build a team is just like you said, I'm not at the point where it's a necessity yet.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I've actually gone as far as I have in these is the Hell Hades free-to-play challenge. I've had to do some Sand Devil because at some point in time for daily quests, you need this oil. That's kind of helpful to have around. But yeah, I'm not ascending this stuff right now because I just don't have a lot of the resources to it, and I don't have the gear I really want to ascend at this point in time most of the time either,
Yeah, for sure.
What about well, we got the different clan bosses here. What have you thought about the different clan bosses too? Because like Demon Lord, obviously the easy one that unlocks early on. I guess the design of this, despite Chimera being the newest of them, is designed to be the middle challenge compared to Hydra, and Hydra being the end challenge.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of what I'm seeing. And I've been pulling champions. People are telling me are really good for Hydra and helpful. But I'm at the point where I need to actually focus in and specifically build them because my main focus has been Demon Lord. It's the easy one. It's the one you throw in, you do keys, you can throw an auto in. And I think the auto is a big thing for like newer players. Like we maybe don't want to sit down and have time to actually like, you don't have the team for it. We know we're not going to be able to, you know what I'm saying? Like, get like a very high score on it. So essentially, at least use the key, throw in an auto. But I like that they do have the diversity with it. So it's not just Demon Lord. You do have Chimera and you do have Hydra that you can focus on. But of course, by the time I came along is when they kind of changed Hydra. And I know that was a big thing. So I never got to experience old Hydra. So I have no comparison between old and new because that was after I came along where they kind of did the change.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, for the early game, the changes to Hydra are not very drastic, at least very, very early on, because a lot of it involves the mechanics of what happens once you decapitate the heads and then when they come back up. So that's oftentimes where you start to see that. So once you start decapitating the heads regularly, that's where you'll see some of the changes that obviously you won't know they're changes, but that's where that's gone. So, and then there's all kinds of other fun stuff too. I mean, Doom Tower, definitely interesting, and I like the rotation of bosses there. How have you finding Doom
Yeah.
Tower? Has that certainly been?
I've been enjoying it. I like the idea of having the secret rooms as well that you can kind of focus in on if you're wanting to. And I like the rotation. So things I do appreciate that they have things like Doom Tower and Curse City. It's not just you're getting into a game and you have your campaign, you have your dungeon, and that's kind of it. There's a lot to the game, which is something I appreciate about Raid, because depending on what area you want to focus on, it keeps it interesting, I think, is a good way to put it.
Yeah,
It gives you
and-
something always to work on.
Yeah, and there's there's a lot to do in Doom Tower and in Raid in general. But at the same time, if you're limited for time, don't focus on Doom Tower start early on. Just do what you're enjoying to start with and enjoy the game. And as you get further on, you'll find things get faster, things get easier, things get more automated as you kind of learn how to automate them as well.
Absolutely. That's a great point, because that was me first. I didn't focus in on them. And then once I unlocked it, I kind of tried it out. And then you kind of realize you don't have to play the game the way that everybody does, right? It's not a sprint. You don't have to try to beat everything and get everything done. Play the parts that you like of the game and at your own pace. Otherwise, you might not enjoy it as much as you could.
Yeah. I mean, personally, my favorite content for this is I love Faction Wars. And that's because I think Faction Wars is probably the best curated challenge content where you are curated by the different factions. The different factions do generally have somewhat distinct play styles. The Orc Crypt feels different than the Barbarian Crypt because the Orc champions generally feel a little bit different. And it's one of those things you may not notice early on when you're just getting random champs, but as you start filling out your roster, you'll see the Orcs tend to be a little more damage oriented, a little less healing support oriented. The Barbarians have all kinds of different support. Strangely enough, the Barbarians are not a damage faction. It feels kind of strange, but there's not a lot of damage as much there. The Dark Elf Crypt has got a lot of interesting support and complex kit. The High Elves are, faster. It's all kinds of interesting little tidbits you might find in some of those.
Yeah, things you can appreciate with the game as you kind of get into it, eh? Yeah, because that's not something that I necessarily noticed. I do like that they do have the different factions, but I haven't noticed it to that point yet. So that's actually, I like how they've done that. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's probably most noticeable when you get some of the legendaries. Just, some factions like Shadowkin is a high damage, high speed, but there's almost no revivers in this faction. It's just, in fact, I think the only reviver in this faction is Kinagashi, I believe. She's got the revive right here. So if you're ever doing Faction Wars and you pick a Kinagashi up, grab her, because revivers can be absolutely critical. But, it's just one of the unique things about this faction. Now, there's people that can revive, like Gamaren's got a passive that'll let him revive if people die. So he revives a random ally if somebody is killed. Very useful. In fact, I had used this back before they even had the other reviver. But knowing some of those idiosyncrasies can be helpful in the Faction Wars. And again, it's just a nice natural break, which I think is a good challenge. In fact, I like it better than the secret rooms. The secret rooms are kind of a nice, here's what you got to do type thing, but this feels a little more natural to me, the Faction Wars type stuff. And that's kind of why I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I feel like it also adds that aspect to the game that if you are pulling all these champions, it gives you a reason to actually use those champions that you're pulling.
Exactly. So what's been your favorite place in the game, and kind of what's been your least favorite place in the game?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I want to say, I'm trying to think of what I should say my least favorite is, because I'm one of those people, especially creating content on the game. I'm playing everything. I spread myself so thin because I was doing everything in the game. And then I was like, hold up. I need to hone in. I need to actually build an Ultra Nightmare team. I need to actually make sure I'm using all my keys for my Doom Tower, my Curse City, get into Siege and things like that. So I will say least favorite, well, I'm still learning it. I'm not very good at it. It would be Live Arena at the moment. I'm not good at Live Arena, but that is something I want to get better at. That's something I actually want to invest time into and actually learn. So I wouldn't say favorite and least favorite. I would say where I need improvement, maybe. We'll word it that way.
No, that makes sense.
So that's something I can definitely improve upon. I don't think I have one specific favorite area of the game. It's more so something I noticed about the game, very early on, first day playing, is more so than just the graphics of the game, but how they do things. So for example, if you have HP burn, seeing that champion actually on fire burning, to me immediately I was like, this is it. These graphics are amazing. The fact that they went through that extra step to give you that little something. So when you're not autoing and you are paying attention to it, it's just visually it's so nice to look at because they're thinking of those small details. So I would say that's something that's definitely stuck out to me. But of course pulling champions is always a favorite for me because I want to see who I can get and create different teams with it. So I do appreciate that's not just one meta you have to follow. You can kind of every champion has a use is kind of how I see it. So even if I pull something and somebody like in the comments might be like, oh, this is like a garbage champion, but somebody else is like, hey, this champion is really good in this one area of the game that you can actually use them in. So like champions always have a use is the way that I see it. So
yeah, and that's something that having played a few other games here and there, I think Raid does better than a lot of other games. Not only is there a big variety of champions that bring different but similar gameplay to where you don't have to have a specific champion to conquer a particular area. It certainly helps, but you can certainly build teams without a specific champion to conquer certain areas. But on top of that, a lot of these epics are very usable for a long time. Even in endgame, these epics are really, really good as well, which makes you feel, yes, it hurts to not have a lot of these legendaries here, but at least you can feel like, oh good, I don't have that, but I've got a Venom Mage, for example, is one of the better champions that, for an epic I would absolutely love on this account. It just, they're still good champions. There's some places where they're actually still the best in slot in some cases too. It's, even rares. There's a couple of rares that are still good. Cold Heart being probably the end all be all of rare utility.
absolutely.
Painkeeper being another one you'll find if you ever get a bunch of Painkeepers, you need about 3 of them really for most accounts, honestly. It's just, good champions that help you do content, both for early game and end game. Just it's nice to have some of that variety and stuff you can lean on. That said, there's fair trash champions too. I mean, not everybody's going to be great, but
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But I do agree with you. I love that there is the diversity between the epics, that there are so many good epics in this game. And just like you said, you don't need the legendaries to feel like you're going to make it anywhere in the game. And you're like, I don't have this champion. Can't do it, not going to bother, because you have epics as an option. And there's so many champions in this game, let's be honest. So you have a lot of variety in here for sure.
Awesome. So where can they find you?
In terms of my YouTube, you can find me at CC Raid.
We will have a link down below. And awesome. So yeah, it's been fun talking. We are going to shoot a collab on her channel. We're not quite sure how that's going to go, but we're going to be talking about legendaries there, so that will be a lot of fun.
You guys
so
are just gonna have to come tune in and see.
Yep. So any final words for everybody here watching?
Honestly, just to the community, shout out to you guys. You are awesome and amazing. You've welcomed me into this space and allowed us to collab, right? Like if I didn't start, we wouldn't know about each other, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. The community is absolutely amazing. Shout out to you guys. You are amazing letting us do this sort of stuff and joining in. I know it's nice to get some helpful comments in the clips. I know you've commented several times that people have been super helpful in your comments as well. It's I love the help we get people on Twitch, all kinds of fun stuff you can find. There's all kinds of great places, and the community is probably one of the best in gaming as far as I've seen so far. So
hands down.
Shout out to you guys. Absolutely awesome. Go follow her. Go smash her like button and subscribe button. Smash this like button and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. You guys are absolutely awesome. That is Cece, and I am Bront CatHerder.
Bye.
Stoppers, fly by them like choppers, better took those risks, one of my fists, we fire starters, one of them a million.